Commander Worf likes his blood wine very young and very sweet. Chief O'Brien likes his whiskey a single malt, preferably something from the Highlands. And Lieutenant Tom Paris walks across Jadzia Dax's arms. Or maybe that was a different lizard. Hey, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Okay. Hello.
We are joined by a very special guest today, Mr. David Livingston, director and producer of several Star Trek shows. Actually, David, though, I do have at least one writer question for you that you may or may not be able to answer, but we'll get into that a little later. Okay. Today, we are doing a review of Deep Space Nine, Season 6, Episode 16, Change of Heart, written by Mr. Ronald D. Moore, directed by, what do you know, David Livingston. This was March 4th, 1998. How you guys doing?
Great. That was another century ago.
Yeah. Doing well. Crazy. Good to see you, David. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Great to see you, Cirroc.
It's my pleasure. Working with you, we've come across your name now as we reviewed these episodes several times. So it's an honor and pleasure to have you on. We've had many questions to ask you. Specifically the Visitor, which was so impactful for us as we watched it, and in your imprint and impact on making that possible. But yeah, thank you very much, Dave, for being here, man. You really left a big impression on me as a director, and the times that I worked with you, I remember very vividly, in a good way.
That's good, because not all the actors always remembered it so favorably. But thank you. I tend to have a little bit of OCD when I'm directing and push the envelope a little bit too much sometimes. But thank you for that, Cirroc. I appreciate that.
David, before we get too deep into this, I need to retract a statement. You are a writer. You do have a writing credit for the Negus, I believe it was, Deep Space Nine episode. So I should not have said not a writer. You have at least one writing credit on Star Trek Deep Space Nine. This guy can do it all, folks. He's going to be at the Super Bowl halftime show spinning plates and this guy can handle anything.
That's me.
Also, line producer, supervising producer, and your name has come out of our mouth more times than almost anybody. And man, I'm so glad that we finally got you, because we talk about you all the time in your episodes all the time. So, but yeah, real quick, you guys were talking about The Visitor and the panel that you guys did with Tony Todd and Rachel Robinson, I believe it was, and others. That was so cool. Amazing that you got Tony to do it. Any final thoughts on it as a retrospective?
It was just great to see everybody that I hadn't seen in so long. Tony and I periodically see each other at a local market, and he's always so gracious, and I'm so fond of him. And when I asked him to appear on this panel for the Trek Talks event that we did for the Hollywood Food Coalition, he graciously accepted, and we were able to track down Rachel through her father, Andy Robinson, and she appeared, and Cirroc. So thank you, Cirroc. It was great to have that community. One thing we didn't talk about, Cirroc, I don't know if you remember, but we talked about you playing the Tony Todd part. Do you remember that discussion at all?
I do remember that discussion. And I actually remember getting into makeup, and they did that whole aging process on me to try to make me look like the old Jake. And I remember going into Rick Berman's office as after they had done it all, so he could see if it was believable or not. But I think I was too young to pull that off, and I'm glad that Tony Todd was enlisted, and I thought he brought the work, his A game to the table, and just made it believable and authentic. So I'm glad that he was able to join us for this storytelling and do the older Jake parts.
Mm. And not to be lost in this discussion is everybody at home, be sure to donate to the Hollywood Food Coalition. Mr. David Livingston is a staunch supporter of it. And you also help out, don't you?
I'm on the board of directors.
Wow.
Along with John Billingsley, or better known as Dr. Phlox from Enterprise. So yes, thank you. Also, I wanted to mention you brought up my sole writing credit. It was a story credit for the Nagus, and the only part of my story that was used was the B story where Cirroc teaches Aron to read. I don't know if you remember that particular,
of course,
but that's the piece that they liked. The whole Godfather story was an invention by Ira, who Michael Piller said. I went to the story break because as the writer of the story, I got to go to the break. And Michael Piller said, let's do the Godfather. And the bulb went off in everybody's head. And I remember Michael Piller turning to Ira and saying, Ira, write the Godfather over the weekend. and that Monday I got the Godfather in my hand. So it was quite a gift. It was a lot of fun to do that episode. Not only the B story with you and Aron, bless his heart, but to do Quark playing Marlon Brando.
Cirroc, how often do we and our fans and associate producers mention that iconic scene of you teaching Nog how to read? I can't believe that was you, David.
Yeah, that was my idea.
Wow, awesome.
Very great idea. I really think that it told the story of the friendship between the two of them. And I also like that, Jake is helping his friend, trying to overcome something as difficult as illiteracy. So kudos to you for writing that. I think it's a special moment between Jake and Nog that solidifies their bond. And, this relationship between two species of aliens that have never, commingled and intertwined in that kind of way, I thought was important to tell the story of, because that's what we are all trying to do, is find common ground and find the things that we agree on or things that we're alike, as opposed to the differences that we have. And that's one of the things that I thought was special about that story, David. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, and well said. And you talked about the visitor. It was the same kind of dynamic that you have with Nog and the visitor, where he was trying to help you get through what you were experiencing with your father's death. So that relationship continued on, and it would have been nice to have done even more with that relationship. But I'm grateful that we got to do the parts of that relationship that we indeed did cover. So great. And I know that you guys became, fast friends, and he's such a loss to all of us and to the Star Trek community. He was just the loveliest guy. Can I say one other thing? I did the episode where I know we're going to talk about Change of Heart, but I did You're Cordially Invited, the wedding scene.
Yes.
And Aron came, there was supposed to be a dance that was indicated in the script.
The legendary dance.
Right. And Aron came to me. I can't take credit for it, because Aron came to me and he says, David, I don't know what dance to do. Can you tell me, let's speak. What dance do I do? And I said, Aron, you do whatever you want to do. I want to see what you give me. And it was magic. To see he and Terry Farrell dancing is one of my great delights on a set. It was so charming, so innocent, and so beautiful, and so Aron. Aron just put his heart and soul into that dance, and I was so thrilled. So kudos to him. That was all him. He pulled that off entirely on his own, created it all.
Wow. Yeah, that is good, legendary.
Yeah, and I know, David, this really kind of dawned on me while we're talking now, which is going from the Nagus and the Nog Jake teaching him how to read scene, and then going over to this "You're Cordially Invited," which was a very intimate look about these personal relationships between the characters. The Visitor, again, very intimate, emotionally rich insight into characters. And now watching Change of Heart, I felt the same thing. I mean, there were moments when I felt emotionally connected to the performance and to the magnitude of the event that was taking place. Is that something that you, is that something that interests you, telling these very emotional stories and getting into the minutia of that?
I love doing those stories, but I can take no credit for choosing them because as an episodic director, it's the luck of the draw. You don't know what you're slotted in by the executive producer into a certain number. And what script falls to that number, you have no idea. You have no idea.
Scary.
To be able to direct the Nagus, where I provided the initial story for, was just coincidental. It wasn't intended to have me direct that particular episode. So it's entirely the luck of the draw. But the thing about Deep Space Nine, its emotional core and its character relationships were what it was about. The science fiction part of it, to me, that was ancillary. And those 4 shows that you brought up had very little science fiction elements to it. Change of Heart could be done today because they specifically don't have any technology once Worf and Dax are isolated and alone and not able to communicate anywhere. He has his tricorder to read some stuff and some advanced medical equipment, but basically that story can be told now, or it could have been told in 1800. But it's about character relationships, and the science fiction is ancillary to the storytelling, the character development, and the emotional context of that story and the other 3 episodes that you mentioned. And those are the most satisfying to be involved in because it has a core that we can relate to. It's not about just, even though Rick Berman always said, I just want to blow up something. That's true, but also to have heart and that emotional connection, because that's what show business is about. It's about trying to emotionally connect with an audience and maybe reveal something about the human condition that has validity. So that's what's intriguing to me.
Hey, David, when you were talking about the B plot, that you got the story by credit for, and Aron and Cirroc and Jake and Nog, I was reminded that there's a rumor that I had heard from our associate producer, Dr. Marie Segal, and I had heard this as well before, and maybe you could confirm or deny this. This is a writing question. Originally, this episode had a different B plot in which we meet Nog's mother, Prina Dora. Sounds like this is news to you as well.
well, no, I read what you sent me. You sent me this information, and I have no recollection about it. Again, episodic directors do not have any input in the initial script, and even after the script's written, you can only go in and have what's called a tone meeting where you make sure you understand all the beats of the script, but you don't have any specific input into the drama of a script. So that was news to me. I think the script that Ron Moore wrote was brilliant in the A and the B story, where you had the comedy related to the A story with the what's the game called, the Latinum game, Tango. Yeah, and the fact that what's his name is still carrying the torch for Dax. That Bashir is still carrying the torch for her.
Yeah.
And then contrasting to that which comes later. So it's all about love and relationships, lost love, lost attained, love attained and lost. And so I thought that was a brilliant construct of that A and the B story. So I'm glad they ended up with it in that regard, but I don't know about that about Nog meeting his mother, which I think would have been fun to do. I love Ferengis. I think that Ferengis are more indicative of humans than the humans on Deep Space Nine were. I think the Ferengis are a more realistic version of us as we are today. I think the humans on Deep Space Nine had evolved a little bit above where we are, because we're all basically Ferengis. At least I am.
Mm-hmm.
I have better teeth, though.
Smaller ears.
But
there was a lot of humor in this episode. So it wasn't that the B plot matched the tonality of the A plot, but the A plot was surprisingly funny, more so than I remembered it. I did remember the scene where Worf says, "That is a joke. It is not funny, but I get it." Right? I mean, that's a classic Worf line. The
whole introduction inside the shuttle between the two of them and their interplay and their back and forth set up that whole relationship, and it's very funny. I watched it again a couple days ago, and I cracked up. I thought it was great, and I thought both Terry and Michael were unbelievable. Boy, did they have that nailed, and did they have that relationship nailed? It was really. I don't remember on the set experiencing the same stuff that I was able to see when I watched the episode. Because sometimes when you're directing, you're got blinders on and you're thinking about the next shot and all this other stuff. But when you can sit back years, decades later and watch it, you really, it was a whole new experience for me. It was like I didn't even have any part in it. It was fun for me. I thought it was a great episode, except for one thing.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Cirroc, I know you and I, we both stopped. We're like, okay, we got to hear it.
You got to go there. You got to say it.
Well, it's the ending. To me, there was no way that Worf would have gone back.
Oh.
And originally, that was the episode that Terry was going to get killed and die. And to me, the power of that episode would have been so amazing if she had have died. Because here's a man who was so in love, and yet he had to sacrifice his true love for the good of millions of people. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. I can't believe that Worf did that, especially being a Klingon. So I didn't buy it. I wish it had been different. That's the only thing that wasn't right for me in the episode. I did not believe that Worf would do what he did.
Wow.
But hey, Avery says he would have done the same thing, at least as Sisko. So maybe so. But yes, it's heartbreaking. But that's what would have given it such amazing power that he had to go with duty, but not just duty, because that's a kind of a weird construct. But when you have the good of a million versus one person, I go on the side of potentially saving a million people.
I'm going to have to disagree with you on this one.
Okay,
David.
great.
I actually would do what Worf did, and because I had issues in the beginning with them even taking the mission without getting proper clearance and from Starfleet. So they made a very kind of on the fly, errant decision to just go and do this without getting the clearance and getting and talking to the proper channel. So having said that, in my mind, I was also thinking, okay, well, this could be a setup. This could be, this guy could be trying to, he could be saying that he's going to have this information, but he's really trying to set them up. It may not turn out to be information that is that valuable or critical, and he's just trying to find a way out for himself. He may be a criminal that's trying to escape his own crimes. So I was thinking there could be so many things that go wrong in this transaction or in this deal that I would say I'm not going to risk a maybe for the love of my life for a maybe.
That's a great way to put it, but I don't think that was Worf's thought process. When Worf makes that decision, when he's going through the forest, and I got to do my favorite shot of the episode, which was the 360 around him.
Yes.
I wouldn't have been able to do that if he hadn't have left her there if he had continued on with the mission. So I love doing that shot, but that's where he makes the decision to go back. He's not thinking about, I don't think he's thinking about all of the things that you just brought up. I think he's simply thinking about, can I do this to the woman I love? And to me, it was a selfish act, not a selfless act. I think he was being selfish. And I think if he had the chance to ask Dax at that moment, she would have said, you better get your ass back on that mission and you forget about me. Okay. That's what I think was the reality. Even though what you expressed is right, but I don't think that was Worf's thought process.
And there leads to the OCD that you mentioned earlier, David, when you say when you're directing. That level, ladies and gentlemen, is the kind of thought that David puts into these scripts when he's filming and recording. So he goes through these kinds of conversations with the actors. I'm sure I don't want to speak for you, but I do recall you having kind of in-depth conversations about what Worf would be thinking or what a character would be thinking in a particular moment. So can you explain a little bit about that process, about your OCD and the thoughts that you put into it?
Well, in terms of talking about to the actors about their characters, the principal characters on a series know more about their characters than I will ever know. So I was never presumptuous enough to talk to them about their motivations and stuff. I wish I could say that I had more of those conversations, but when you're shooting episodic television, you a lot of times don't have the time to do that. And you expect the actors to have read the script and read the script, same script you have read, and know what their through line is, and know what their motivation is, and know what their given circumstances are. And if they do that, and they're of the quality of actors that Michael Dorn and Terry Farrell are, you don't have to talk to them about it. It's there on the page, and they get it. So those conversations are rare. I would have those conversations with guest stars, because a lot of times they come into a new situation and they're not sure about the Star Trek world, and they're not really positive about what their place is in the story, even though it should be apparent in the writing. So that I would have conversations on. My OCD more comes with getting all of the emotional information that I want on camera and making the shot portray something and drive the story. Every shot, every camera setup should advance the story in some way. And I always wanted that shot to work 100%. A lot of times you can't get there. But I wanted to make sure that whatever I did translated into emotionally driving the story forward. I hope that answers the question. But
yeah,
we've got to jump to our break in just a second here. But speaking of your favorite shot, I knew that was your favorite shot when I saw that. I was like, oh my God, that must have been so fun to do, the 360. And I couldn't help but look. I'm like, what bunch of trees are they hiding behind? Where's Videoville? And I couldn't find it. I could not find it. So that was really impressive. We're going to take a quick break, and everybody stick around. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc, Lofton, and very special guest today, Mr. David Livingston. We are reviewing Deep Space Nine, Season 6, Episode 16, Change of Heart. Very quickly, here are some trivioids that may or may not have made the top of our show. Here we go. Dax doesn't joke about the Dabo table, Dax doesn't joke at the Dabo table. That was a close one. Worf has no idea how to play Tongo. Quark has now won 207 straight games over the last month. Chief O'Brien and Commander Worf bet a bottle of blood wine versus a bottle of whiskey. Dax thinks the Enterprise must have been one dull ship. Dax has to brush her hair exactly 50 strokes every night. 3 British agents have disappeared in West Berlin. Lieutenant Tom Paris, we I don't know if we got that joke, but that was a Voyager reference, of course. Worf's brother Nikolai used to take him on camping trips in the Ural Mountains. Dax doesn't want to vacation by climbing Vulcan's Forge in the middle of the summer or anything like that. She just wants room service. All right. Lots of really good stuff there. Now, David, we kind of, I don't know if we were done talking about that 360-degree shot, but it was, obviously it was the climax of the episode. So it needed something special. And was that something you kind of pictured from the beginning when you were writing the script, or was that something you kind of tried to think about, like, how do I make this a more powerful scene? What do I want to do with it specifically?
Yeah, I don't know where the germ of the idea came from, but I wanted to make sure I was able to visually show that here was a man who wasn't sure what to do, and how can I see his process of going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and how can I do that in one shot so that I don't break the moment, and I allow Michael to rotate around so he's looking back to where he left his wife, to where his mission is supposedly going to take him. And to me, the 360 was the appropriate way to do that in one shot. And I don't remember specifically, but usually when you do a 360 like that, you want the actor rotating in the opposite direction of the camera so that it's an opposing moment and their face is coming into the camera as you're moving it around. So I like that shot. If I saw that by another director, I said, "Oh, that's really good." So kudos to me for that one.
And one more thing that I wanted to hit before I forgot was when you mentioned, David, that was possibly going to be the scene in the episode where Jadzia Dax dies. And I remember when I first saw this, whatever it was 20 years ago, I knew that Dax died. I knew that Ezri, came after that, but I wasn't 100% sure when. And I remember when I saw this episode, I was like, wait, is this the episode? And like, I thought, wait, is she going to die? And Cirroc, I was wondering at that point, I was like, did you have that moment where you're like, shit, is this when Jadzia dies? Or did you know, no, it's not until the end of the season?
Yeah. I didn't think about whether she was going to die or not. I was actually like caught up in the moment of the performance. I thought the performances were spectacular in this episode. I think Terry Farrell might have given her best performance thus far, in my opinion, in this particular episode. She knocks this out of the park. The sensitivity, the comedy, the emotions of when she's dying, and she has that look on her face that it's like, I know you have to go on. Like, I already know. I know what the deal is. I've assessed all the risks. I know what's happening. I know that you're in this position. You have to make this decision. I thought she delivered that excellently. I also love the relationship between her and Worf, because I think in the past, I usually see them butting heads more often. And this one, I actually saw them getting along more. Like, she was like a little bit surprised by it. Like, hey, you're really like pleasant and agreeable. And he was like, what, did you want to fight over it? And
yes.
I thought he was charming as well, where Worf is usually, I didn't say that, and kind of, rough about it. But in this way, he was playful with his words and saying stuff like, that was a joke, it is difficult to work with you or live with you.
Yeah.
So I just loved the playfulness. It felt like a real relationship, like how a couple goes. They yell at each other one moment, but they love each other the next. And I thought it was a genuine performance. And like I say, I thought Terry Farrell knocked it out of the park, and it would have actually been sad to see her die, because it was like, this is your best performance and you're gonna die. It's like, but you really brought it out, David, and captured those real soft, subtle moments. And there was a risk of her dying. I felt that. I felt like it's up in the air. I didn't have an opinion either way whether it would happen or not. But I did feel like, okay, you're leaving somebody in the middle of the jungle. the odds are not too good for them, and they have to self-medicate. And she doesn't look like she's already in her right mind. She looks like she's losing her ability to be cognitive and make good decisions. So, really love the way you touched on that intimacy in that final moment, even between Worf and Sisko. David, I think you chose to do this kind of shot at the end where Sisko turns away from Worf after telling him, as a commander, as your captain, you're in trouble, and I'm going to report you. And then you did a turn away where he kind of turns and does a profile, and you have Worf in the background, and then he says, but if it was me and it was Jennifer, it'd be a different story. I'd do the same thing you did. So I really love that directing choice too, David, for that shot.
Thank you. I think I would give that credit to Avery, that he chose not to look at Michael at that point. And my job was to make sure that I captured it to show that he did that. So I don't remember the particulars of that, but thank you for recognizing that, because I think those are the little things that really resonate with me emotionally, showing how he can't directly tell Michael this, but he can tell him it indirectly. So I think that's very perceptive on your part, and a wonderful choice that the actor made. And back to Terry, I agree with you 1,000%. Terry initially had struggles in the pilot of Deep Space Nine. There was a lot of stuff going on. She was brought in at the last minute. She really didn't know what the character was, and was having terrible times with it. I had a couple of talks with her about it, just trying to do my part to tamp down her emotional distress. But boy, did she grow as an actress and grow into that part. And I think her performance was absolutely wonderful. And you give me credit for some of the emotional context. It was the actors who brought that. My only thing was, and I'm a big fan of this, is the close-up. And when I say close-up, I'm talking about this kind of close-up. Yeah. And their performances drew me into that close-up. It wasn't, I'm going to do a big close-up on them. It's watching the rehearsal and realizing, oh my goodness, look what they're giving me. How can I maximize the impact of that performance? Well, don't show anything else other than that. And I think I made the right choice there, because I don't think there's ever been a more beautiful Klingon than Michael Dorn, physically, just so imposing. And Terry Farrell is exquisite, and to see them giving so much emotionally. And what Michael did, Michael had this amazing ability to work through the makeup, the prosthesis makeup. That ain't so easy, because it's all in the eyes and stuff. And he worked that makeup so well, and you really felt for Worf in that episode. He couldn't have, you couldn't have read any more off of his emotional state if he had all the makeup off of him, because he was able to project through it and bring through the Worf and Michael Dorn. Terrific performances. I was surprised how emotionally I was affected by the episode after seeing it. So I was actually so pleased to see them both do that.
Yeah, it still holds up. This is 25 years later. It still holds up.
Again, it's because it could happen today. You were talking about the repartee between the two as a couple. Well, it's no different than what we might do with our partners today. So it was so, and that's again, kudos to Ron Moore. What a wonderful, wonderful writer, and his ability to bring in the human touch to a space show is pretty extraordinary. And his subsequent career has shown how valuable he is to the writing community, and specifically to the science fiction world.
Yeah, and just double down on what you say, giving kudos to Ron Moore. The language that he used to set up this episode, I thought was just great. Worf says, "I'd rather lose on you than win with someone else." That's beautiful language. Very, it's just romantic. When Quark calls him Commander Boring,
I thought that's great.
Is the commander boring over there?
Yeah.
I thought it was hilarious. And when Worf gets serious and says, I do not wish to debate this, when he makes up his mind at some point, because he was very easygoing throughout the whole thing. And then at some point, he just like puts his foot down and is like, all right, you want Klingon? This is Klingon. I'll go full Klingon on you right now. And he did.
Very good.
So I did want to say that I love the language in this episode. Ron Moore with the single malt probably from the Highlands, just the detail in the writing. And when she says, I'll follow you through the gates of hell, I love the way she delivered that line. I thought Terry was great for saying that. Great delivery, great scene. And then the emotions in Terry's last scenes where she just says, just kiss me and go. I thought that was big. She's like, no more talk. Let's end it right here. And also when she says it's been a great 2 months, hasn't it? It just made you realize how fresh their marriage was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did the math in my head too. I was like, wow, that's only been 2 months. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was actually moved to, tears a little bit with this. I felt myself my eyes welling up during Terry's performance. So that's why I say I feel like it was her best performance, because I really believed her in those scenes.
It's one of those episodes where everything came together. It starts with the word. It starts with the writing. You get two marvelous actors. You give them a chance to play these unbelievable. Well, first of all, you put them in a situation. It's every moment in show business should be life and death. At least you should try and look at it that way. Literally, every moment in this episode was life and death, starting with them trying to traverse through the asteroid field. So when you can have something that has that gravitas, big word, attached to it, it's a pretty wonderful world to exist in. And as a director, to be able to be given that gift with that amount of stuff in it, it's really wonderful. And your job is just not to muck it up. So and rise to the occasion. And again, everybody rose to the occasion. Herman Zimmerman and Andy McIlvaine built me this wonderful jungle that I could play in, and you're going to see the same twig about 25 times, but that's okay, because I don't think the audience really knows, because a leaf is a leaf. But I had this great set to play in, and I could move the camera all around and never have to worry about seeing the stage or the crew or anything. So it was very, very cool.
Very quickly, just to piggyback on the Jadzia performance by Terry, it was very noticeable in a lot of scenes for me. But there was also one scene in particular at the very end, and I believe this is one of those famous David Livingston close-ups. And it was when Worf is explaining to Dax that he did not, in fact, get the Cardassian, that he left him. She had these wonderful small reactions that are necessary in a close-up. You got to have small reactions there, subtle, but the camera picks it up. And, just to talk a bit more about, her growth as an actress, like I was watching that and I made these realizations. I was like, wow, that's really good. With every word he said, just a little eyebrow lift, and you could see it registering in her mind, and her subtle reactions of like, wait, what happened? This is not what I expected to hear. And it was really beautiful to see. And I was very pleased and excited to see such a great performance. But also, I did want to ask you, David, and you just answered it, where you shot that, if that was on the actual lot, or did you go to some kind of, already partially dressed arboretum somewhere in Pasadena, or what was it? Was that actually?
No, that was all. It was all shot on stage 18.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow. That's a lot of work.
The crew, we all were off the jungle part of it, just sitting out on the stage floor, because you didn't want to go in and trample the vegetation. You wanted to keep it as pristine as possible for for the length of the shoot. So it was, we'd be in one area, which was just an empty, a stage with a bunch of equipment. And then all of a sudden we went into this other world where these actors were existing in this jungle set. So it was a rather interesting thing. And just one thing on the close-up you were talking about, that was Terry at the end, I think you're talking about, right?
Yes. Yeah, when she's in the hospital bed.
Right. Those were the two largest close-ups on the episode. And I'm not going to speak for Terry on this, but literally the camera was right here. And I think, again, I don't want to speak, Cirroc, you might be able to answer this better, but knowing that the camera was that intimate to her gave her the opportunity not to have to do anything more than just feel what she was feeling. And that some way the facial gestures just grew out of her emotional state. She didn't have to act with her face. It was just organic. Cirroc, does that make sense?
Yeah, it is organic, and it's also supplemented by the makeup, which I thought was fantastic as well. In this episode, it looked like she was losing blood and she was losing color in her face. I thought it accentuated the feeling that she had where she was on the verge of collapse. And and she also played that emotionally. Like there was she still remained strong because she was like, you got to do this. And even when Worf said at the end, I didn't save the people, and I know you would do the same for me, she's like, well,
yeah, that's your call, buddy.
Yeah,
no, that's very good.
Yeah.
And the makeup, I agree. When they did the transition from where she was kind of okay to where she was going downhill quickly, that was a great makeup job. Yeah, absolutely.
Great makeup
and
job.
She played it. She played it wonderfully. Her face seemed to just drop, and everything kind of just went down like this. And she was wonderful in it. I was so pleased to see the episode again and see what she did.
Yeah, and one other thing, just to add to that, I was also saying how beautiful she looked on the verge of death. I was like, wow, she looks so good.
Still, how does she do it?
How does she do it?
Yeah, she had good genes.
Yeah. But yeah, I really, and even the B storyline with the O'Brien and Bashir, that was fun for me as well. There was part of me that was, I love the fact that, they played on Bashir's genetic modifications and the fact that he has these abilities, and it still didn't give him the advantage. Quark says, a computer hasn't been invented that can beat us in this, right?
Because of heart won over intellect. And I actually felt I felt terrible for Bashir. I had empathy for him. Oh, this poor guy. Not that he lost the game, but that he's still carrying this unbelievable torch for this unattainable woman. That was wonderful to have that whole emotional which was sort of a reflection of the A story. So again, wonderful writing. And that's why I thought those A and B stories, which don't always complement each other, it was a perfect match and contrast. So exactly, I'm with you on that one, Cirroc.
I found myself kind of trying to calculate that too, like whether somebody that's genetically engineered to be super smart could beat somebody at a game who, whatever intelligence that person may be. If that person's been playing the game for 20 years, I was thinking that person, if it's a game of strategy, might be like, okay, people that are really smart tend to go in this direction first, or they try to, they get overconfident. So I'm thinking like this guy, even with genetically engineered, is still no match for Quark, who is an expert at this game, because it's about, human nature or person nature, I guess, and, understanding it. So that was really fun for me to watch. But then you have to kind of wonder, but how is he going to beat him? Is he just because he expects to what he's going to do? But in this case, it's just because he's playing him. It's like
Quark.
It's like playing poker or like those chess hustlers out in the park. They're just messing with the person's mind. They're just trying to get that advantage.
Quark understands human nature better than any human, and he knew right where to go, right for the jugular. He knew he had him from day one. He had him at hello.
Yes. And I also got a little insight into O'Brien and who he is, and I felt like this was something that needed to be said. I don't know if it's been said before, but O'Brien tells Bashir, "Why do you think I'm an engineer? For the challenge. Why do you think I play you in darts, even though you're a cyborg? I know you're better than me, but I know it's a challenge. I want to beat you, and we now it feels like, oh, that's right. That's what motivates O'Brien, the challenge. Hey, you got 5 minutes to fix this warp core engine. You got 2 minutes. Whatever it is, it's that challenge where he's has to figure it out in this amount of time. And I thought that was a good insight into who O'Brien is. It kind of made me say, oh yeah, that's right. That is who he is. He is that guy that he's not motivated by money. He's not motivated by the same things that all of us are motivated by. He just wants
to challenge.
Yeah.
And he also hates to lose. and he's really not very fond of Quark. Let's be honest there.
And which was the incentive for him to kind of entice Bashir to get in. He was like, you want to do it for the challenge? And Bashir's like, no, that's your thing. Do you want to do it for the Latinum? He's like, no, I don't care about Latinum. But what about the look on Quark's face? He's like, yes.
Deal.
That's it. That's what we're going for. And ultimately, it all boils down to emotional. What am I going to get emotionally out of something? It's not money, like you said. It's not winning the game. It's how can I feel better about myself?
Absolutely.
But that was a good realization. I noticed that too, Cirroc, when Chief O'Brien says, he's in it for the challenge. It tracks. It makes sense. You're like, yeah, because he's always playing. He's the everyman. He's the regular guy. Who knows if he's even, smarter than average intelligence or what it is. But there's something about him. He's the regular guy that keeps excelling, that keeps, that you can depend on, because he's not going to put that tricorder down until that red flashing light in the Jeffries tube or whatever tube is fixed. He's just going to keep working at it and coming at it from a different angle. So it was one of those interesting things, because you're not used to hearing someone say something in the 6th season that reveals something about their true nature that you hadn't already thought about or known, but it did reveal it, and it totally made sense, and it explained Chief O'Brien in a nutshell.
Yeah, great point, Cirroc. Somebody, it's one of those guys or men or women, they're the engine that drives everything and that has a commitment to that kind of stuff. And I'm with you there.
And, really quickly, I just want to make a little highlight for everybody out there who's watching the episode. In the scene where Worf is walking through the jungle and leaving Dax behind, he has a backpack on. And it's a Star Trek, official backpack. But it was a really cool looking modern backpack with these metal kind of design patterns. And I realized while I was watching it that today you can find such backpacks on the market. Like that essentially must have spawned, or people have decided to recreate such a backpack, because those kinds of things exist. And it just made me think, wow, I don't remember having, we had the usual JanSport, backpack that every kid has when you go to school. And the evolution in backpacks hadn't really been there yet in this period of time. We didn't have all these fancy backpacks that we have now. But I noticed that really just subtly as he was walking by. So, oh, that's available now. But then that was a brand new idea to have a cool looking backpack like that.
I wish we did have those.
Cirroc, here's my tricorder.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, and this is better than a tricorder, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But you're absolutely right. The influence culturally, sociologically that Star Trek has had, and the inspiration for scientists. One of these panels that we had on Trek Talks was about how these scientists were inspired by watching Star Trek, and that gave them the motivation to want to become a scientist. That's pretty extraordinary for a television show to do that. So pretty crazy. So from backpacks to iPhones to Hubble and James B. Webb or whatever this telescope is called.
And doors that open themselves at the grocery store.
Yeah, that's probably the best thing of all, especially when you got 2 bags in your hand.
It was the first one.
Yeah,
for sure.
So I just noticed those things, and we take them for granted because we see them, and you just go, okay, that's normal. I've seen that already. But those things didn't exist at the time that we were producing the show, and it was a futuristic or advanced concept that our art designers and our wardrobe and all these people came up with, that they deserve the credit for, because it did inspire such things to be created in reality. And so, I mean, just another kudos to the team of people that bring Star Trek to life, including yourself, David. I don't know how much time we have, but I did want to ask you about a minute. Okay, well, then I'm going to have to say
go for it. No, let's do it.
Well, my question is really, about Next Generation, and just your start, a little bit of background just about the first time you were involved in Star Trek and what the beginnings were like for you.
And is it true that Captain Picard's fish is named after you, by the way?
That's correct. Livingston is a lionfish, which was in the ready room, and it was named after me by Herman Zimmerman, the production designer on The Next Generation and subsequent series, because the lionfish would be fed live goldfish. And I had the reputation
like
for
sushi?
being no, I had the reputation for being difficult and taking no prisoners, because as a production manager, your job is not to say yes, your job is to say no.
Right.
No. And that was his way of recognizing my participation in the process. Even though as a production manager, which I started off on the pilot of The Next Generation, I always wanted to give as much money as I could to whatever people needed to a certain point. But at some point you have to do your job and say, no, we're all in those kinds of positions. But it put me in an unenviable position with a lot of the creative people at that point. So when but that's where I started. I started on, I was all by myself in a trailer on the Paramount lot in February of 1987 for the pilot. And the rest is history.
Wow.
Well, this just opens the door for us to say, very obviously, David, we must have you back again sometime soon. We really appreciate the time you've given us, and we'll appreciate it just as much if you do it again for us.
It's great to talk about this stuff and refresh your memory about it all, and to connect again with all the people that made this such a delightful period of my life. It was the most satisfying creative period of my life. So I'm grateful that you guys are continuing to present it to the public and to the fans. So thank you for the invite.
Oh, you've made a work of art. We just want to keep appreciating it. So thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And everybody at home, remember, we want to give a special thanks to Carmen, aka Skillet, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri. Check this out, David. Bill Victor Arucan.
Okay.
Yvette Blackmon, Tom Homer Freezy out somewhere in New Yeezy, Eve England out in Wales, Dr. Anne-Marie Segal, Titus Mohler, Tim Baum, Darlena Marie, John Mann, Rex A. Wood, occasional science advisor, Dr. Mohamed Noor, for Star Trek, I should say. Joe Balsarati, Tierney C. Diekman, Ed Maurer, Anil O. Palat, Anil K. Chander, Thomas Collings, Lawrence Niels, Isaac Stock, Ed Jarrett, and of course, a very special thanks to Dr. Susan V. Gruner. So everybody at home, remember your marching orders. Hollywood Food Coalition, please take care of it. Donate what you can. If you can't donate, we get it. But you know what you can do? Share it with your friends, because that's free. And your friends got a load of money. So, so do whatever you can, like this video, boost the signal, tweet out the Hollywood Food Coalition, donate, and keep it in mind for future donations as well. David, thank you very much. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
And everybody at home, stick around for the free-for-all. It's going to be a fun one. And until then, always remember the 7th rule. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the 7th rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
Mr. David Livingston has been gracious enough to stick around and field thoughts, comments, questions throughout the free-for-all. We are joined today by Mr. Galdu Scott. We've got Anna Post somewhere in New York, like western-ish New York.
Clear Lakes region, central, right in the middle.
Right. We've got Melissa Longo here wearing a Ferengi shirt from her online shop called walkingartmadebymelissa.com. Also next to her, Mohamed Noor has another shirt made by walkingartmadebymelissa.com. So check those out. Homer Freezy out somewhere in New Yeezy is sporting the Sci-Fi Sisters. Also awesome. Dr. Sue Gruner always has the best hair in the internet with her cat Spock shirt. And Dr. Marie Segal somewhere in Manhattan.
Yes, with a Chat Pack shirt from the Teespring store.
Oh, very cool.
Yes.
Very cool. A JR Pool creation.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a bit more about this fun episode. I have a feeling that Mr. Homer Frizzell would like to start us off here.
Hi. Yeah. So this one, it's always tough for me to watch just because Jadzia gets hurt like that. And then they've got that tough decision and Worf makes that decision and then changes his mind. And I just wonder how it would have been. And I think I've read about this somewhere, but how it would have been if he actually kept going and she had not made it. And kind of like the ramifications there would have been with that throughout the rest of the season and the series.
Mm-hmm.
Perish the thought.
I know.
Bit of foreshadowing there.
No comment.
Spoiler free review by Homer.
And I'm also curious, David, if you have ever played Tongo.
No, I haven't. I wouldn't have the nerve or the courage to do it, especially up against Quark.
I can't even keep track of confront and then let's
evade,
hedge, and 10% hedge and whatever else.
Way over my pay grade.
Evade.
Yeah. There was a lot of Tongo talk in this episode, more so like the Tongo techno babble, more so than any other episode, I think.
I would think, now this reminds me, I would say we saw a little bit of pillow talk and maybe Jadzia would say, hey, Worf, give me some of that Tongo talk.
Wow.
Oh,
Probable. I am not.
That's probably up there with asking him to smile a lot.
He did promise. He did. That's
promise.
Something I didn't remember. He did promise that he would smile more. So let's see if he does. Well, Dr. Susan B. Gruner, any thoughts on this wonderful episode? And have you seen it again recently?
Am I the only one experiencing audio issues?
There's like an echo.
Yeah, I'm getting an echo.
But wait, Ryan,
we'll
say
see what
something.
happens.
I can't tell if it's just when Ryan talks.
Just when Ryan talks? I don't
heard
think
it.
so.
I heard it a little bit too. I'm going to go on mute though.
Okay. Dr. Sue is our communications officer. Oh, wait, you're right.
There is an echo when you talk.
Justin.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. What I really liked about this episode was that it showed an actual relationship, the marital relationship that Worf and Jadzia had. I thought it was interesting because you always hear her say that her marks or spots, whatever you want to call them, they go all the way down. We got to see this time for 2 seconds that they went all the way down. And I did wonder how much time they spent doing that for what was that, like a 3-second shot on the camera. But I liked the way she respected. He was doing his little thing with the little prayer thing that he was doing. She stopped talking when she saw that he was doing that. I thought that was pretty cool that she respected his belief, whatever he was doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
his prayers.
I like that, but I also thought it was dumb that they would send a husband and wife on a mission together.
That's not Worf's fault. That's like Starfleet Command's fault. I hated that.
It was like nobody left on the station. It was just like Kira had to run the whole station by herself. Everybody else, except for Miles, was playing cards. So I don't know.
This is true.
Yeah, David, we didn't really touch much on that about those opening scenes. Do you remember anything about those? Was it kind of a point to make sure that we saw the spots on the legs or Worf's reaction to them?
I have a feeling that was probably indicated in the script because it was a very specific moment, and the makeup department would have had to have known ahead of time to put the spots on her leg because she really doesn't have those.
What?
Do you know that one thing that a lot of people don't know is Michael Westmore from day one on the pilot numbered every time that he okay, so you know that, Sue. Every time he applied the makeup, but putting it onto her calf like that was unique and was done specifically because I'm sure it was scripted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wish I had known because I would have told Michael that if he ever needed help putting the spots on, that he doesn't have to worry about hiring outside or anything.
Yeah,
I would
save money.
Really good artist.
You're already there.
Like an intern. It's like, yeah, it's
Exactly, like an
it's
intern.
okay.
What a giver.
But David, I wanted to ask you also, because we didn't get too much into the guest star who played Lasarin, because he was in it kind of briefly, but I did like the way he had that arrogance and disdain for Worf. I mean, he played that pretty well, I thought. There was a moment where he was like, don't wreck your brain, or don't work your brain, Klingon. I'll figure it out for you.
Yeah, there aren't that many Cardassians in Hollywood, but I thought he was. Yeah, I mean, there's only a dozen or so, and he was the best of the group. So he was actually very good.
Mm-hmm.
I like the way that he looked over at Worf too. It was kind of askance, and he really wouldn't cut him much slack. I thought he was very good.
Mm-hmm.
There are no small parts, only small actors. Right, Cirroc?
That's right. That's right. And if you do your part, people will be talking about it. And
just like here, yeah.
Yeah, that's what he did. Exactly. I thought it was pretty good.
So, Dr. Mohamed Noor, by the way, did you know that David Livingstone was this funny? He was saving his jokes for the free-for-all, I swear. You guys, have you seen this episode recently? Any thoughts on it?
Sure, I just watched it last night. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it was quite good. I mean, the lines were great, and since the lines had all the different aspects, you had like some deep lines there where they're really struggling. You had some revealing ones, like the way Jadzia was trying to use humor, and you could see it before she explained it too. You could see she was trying to use humor to just get through this thing. And of course, the funny ones. I love the on the Enterprise. I was considered to be quite funny, or I can't remember exactly what he said. That was a great one. The makeup I thought was really good. And aside from the part that you guys were talking about earlier, like as she was getting sicker, you could really visibly see that on her very conspicuously. So I thought that was quite good. I had a question actually based on Susan reminded me when she just asked that or mentioned the thing about the little prayer. Who was that in there? Because when Worf was looking, there was somebody in there. I didn't quite catch who it was.
Kalis?
Was it Kalis, or was it like a relative? Okay. I wasn't sure if it was somebody we were supposed to know.
Okay.
So we're all supposed to... Yeah, we assumed it was Kalis, right? But we don't... Who knows?
Kalis or real Kalis?
Clone Kalis. Like Moog or somebody like that. Maybe I don't know.
Kalis would be mad if he found out people were praying to him. He wouldn't like that.
Did anybody else take a notice of Worf's hair when he let it down?
Oh yeah.
Luxurious,
luscious.
There's a L'Oreal. There's a meme that says like L'Oreal because you're Worf it.
Yeah.
He could totally do a commercial for
Be now so soon.
Yeah.
He did one for Neutrogena, like in real life.
Really?
He should do one with Mary Chifo that says Laurel because you're Worf it. Right? Because they have the L'Oreal because you're Worf, but now we can add.
Yeah.
Because you're Worf it.
Worf it. Yeah, I had Jason Momoa kind of flashbacks when he was coming down there.
Ooh,
Yeah,
like,
good
okay,
analogy.
right there.
Good analogy, Cirroc.
There it is.
And Jason Momoa is good at the axe throwing, and we saw 2 demonstrations of Worf's skill with the mek'leth.
Yep.
Tossing.
Yep. I saw it.
Malissa Longo is here judging our dumb jokes. Do you have any thoughts on this today?
Yeah, I actually, it wasn't a favorite episode of mine back in the day, but on the rewatch, I found a greater appreciation for it, and I think that's because how beautifully done the relationship of Jadzia and Worf is portrayed. It's honest. It feels like a real couple talking back and forth to each other. The banter in the runabout was great. I love that. And I love how Jadzia helps Worf relax. He opens up. Yeah, he opens up so much, and it's good to see Worf, because he's such a great character, and Jadzia, gosh, I love her. What an amazing character she is too, and DS9 is so wonderful with telling amazing stories with strong women, and she's definitely one of those captivatingly strong women. So yeah, I really enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, I really liked it when she said for her honeymoon she didn't want to have any bleeding or anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to suffer.
Not touching that one either. Yeah, she just wants to be, what was it, room service? That's what she said.
Right.
It doesn't matter how far into the future you go, room service is still an important thing to have. I don't want to lift the finger.
Not on vacation.
Yeah. Dr. Marie Segal, your thoughts?
I love it. It's so beautiful and wonderful. I mean, we already said, I really don't like that Worf gets in trouble at the end because it's not his fault he got assigned on an away mission with his Parmakai. Also, I particularly love this episode because I don't know, in the writer's room, like, who had all of this trauma knowledge? Well, like, first of all, incorporating anticoagulatory agents in the phaser makes the Dominion so freaking brutal. Like, I love that aspect. Like, that just takes being shot to a whole other level. And then also just like the way they're kind of monitoring her bandages and stuff, it really makes you feel like, wow, they really did take first aid at the academy. I love everything about it, but you just kind of like get fatigue as they're like taking forever to get through the jungle. And it's amazing how much is accomplished in 43 minutes or minus credits. It's just, I love this episode so much.
The anticoagulatory agents, that I feel like I've heard, isn't there something that does that on Earth?
Rat poison? Have you been rat poisoned?
Lots of insects.
Insects. I was going to say like actual like bites or stings that do that.
Yeah.
Well, and we had.
I could give you a list.
We had a glimpse of that in a previous episode with Kike. When he died, he got shot by.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he bled out because of the anticoagulant agent.
Good knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anna, how are you? I don't know. Have you seen this episode recently? Do you remember it? Any lasting thoughts from it?
I did rewatch it recently. This was actually an episode that I always loved too, which is nice. I love the Klingons are some of my favorite aliens, and I love the Klingon myth, but usually all the myths are like the battles and the fighting to the death and the big and boisterous. And this one is more of a subtle myth, because you have heard all through like TNG and through DS9, the Kahless and Lucara and the fighting and the two Klingon hearts and how, they killed the gods for that bond. And it is such a romantic story. And then they start with the marriage and their closeness, and just that subtleness of Worf running away and the heartbeat getting louder and louder and louder, and pulling him back. So you find the truth in the myth, but in such like a quiet, subtle way, where it's shown and not told until the end. And I always thought that was really beautiful.
Sounds like you've got some knowledge of scripts when you say show, don't tell.
I might have some acting in my background.
It shows. David, was that written on the page, the heart pounding? Like, does it say something like his heart pounds louder and louder? Was that an addition by you? Where did that come from?
I don't remember, but I'll give credit to the post-production people to have put that in there. We had a great sound crew and sound editors, but I don't know the origin of that.
We're gonna
I'll take credit.
We're gonna find something that David's gonna take credit for. He's been dodging credit. Right?
I have a question about excuse me, the end of the episode. How ironic and wonderful it was with Avery or Benjamin Sisko telling him I would have done the same thing. Well, he had to leave his wife behind, and that was traumatic. He's on Deep Space Nine because of that. And that was a gut-wrenching thought. Was that you?
No, that's all in the writing. Are you asking me?
Good.
No, the script, we were talking about it before. Ron Moore is an incredible writer, and the depth of that script and the relationship stuff that he wrote is extraordinary. He's quite a gift.
Yeah, he's still writing some amazing scripts right now. He's just blowing us away right now with that. Mr. Goldu Scott, how are you today out in South Carolina?
Yeah, pretty well. I enjoyed this episode, once again, like everybody else is saying, more than I had originally. But man, and the Worf and Jadzia stuff was great, but I super enjoyed Julian and Miles trying to figure out how to play this game. And I also love the subtlety of this. I don't recall this happening in a lot of other episodes, but the A and B plot being together in the beginning with Jadzia playing Longo with all, and then it's separating, and then both of them having had started together. And man, did Worf lay down the smoothest silk line when he said, I wrote it down, I would rather lose a bet on you than win on anyone else. And he just turns his head and it landed perfectly. Landed perfectly. I absolutely love that. And another part, which is not related, still in the B plot, was when Miles is talking about how he played the game before, and he just throws out, I was hanging out with a Ferengi private pirateer and a Romulan assassin. And I'm like, can we get a little bit more on that? Just like hanging out with an assassin and a pirate. And then I learned how to play a card game. Yeah, I just did it this once, though. It wasn't that interesting. I don't think it was that interesting. You're hanging around with all those scoundrels, but man, this guy has lived a life before we ever even met him.
Yeah.
So, that's.
Did anybody think when they said that for just half a second? Wait, have I seen that episode? Like, did any of you think? Because I did. I was like, wait, no.
Totally. No, it's just the many chaptered book of Miles O'Brien.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, David, we've got a little bit of time left. So this is something that I was hoping to ask, which is not necessarily related to this episode, but we've got 17 Deep Space Nine episodes you've directed. Do you remember a specific episode that you were, when you read the script, you were just most excited to do?
I'm going to answer that in the opposite way. I'm going to tell you the script that I was the least excited to.
I was going to ask that, and I was like, nah, I should like spin it positive. So that's
you tell.
From my point of view, it's ultimately positive. I had left as a producer on the show and came back as a freelance director. And my first job back was I was given a script called The Visitor. And I read it and I said, this isn't Star Trek. What do I do with this? Where's the car? Where's the stunts? Where's the this? I had no idea what to do with it. I was petrified with it. I was worried that I was never going to be able to deliver it and then I'd never be able to direct again. And I went to Steve Oster, who had replaced me as the producer on the show, and said, Steve, I can't do this. I have no idea. What is this? And he said, David, go home and read the script again. You've totally missed the boat here. You got to go read it again. I went home and read it again, and then I looked over at my son, and who was, I don't know, how old were you then, Cirroc? Because Cirroc and my son used to hang out. 16, whatever it was, 17. Yeah, I think you were younger than that. I think. I don't mean to correct you, but maybe. And looking at my son, I got it. I said, "Oh, father and son, yeah, wow, this really, I get this. This really it resonates with me." But initially, it went way over my head, and I was petrified of it. Maybe because to pull off a show like that, you really have to be committed, and you have to you've got to bring in your A game to make sure that you don't miss anything in something as miraculous as that script was. So I was very fearful, but now I'm extraordinarily grateful for it.
Wow.
Right.
So thank you, Cirroc, for a great performance. Thank you, Tony Todd. Thank you, Avery. It was the most emotionally satisfying episode I ever did. Rick Berman's compliment, quote unquote, to me was he after the show aired, the next morning he brought me into his office and said, "David, you made my wife cry."
He made us all cry.
Yeah, I don't think any of us were holding it back.
That was his.
It's been accomplished.
But that was his reprimand to me that I had the nerve to make his wife cry. That's the Berman way.
That episode made me cry.
Mm-hmm.
Well, David, we love your humility, and you never really try to take credit for things, but obviously you had a huge impact, and your fingerprints are all over these episodes. But of course, if you were the kind of person that took credit for everything, you probably wouldn't have done the most episodes in Star Trek. So yeah. They would have said, "Yeah, that guy's too arrogant. He thinks it's all about him." So I love the way you approach it. But yes, you have this ability, because what I think is most conveyed about your presence on the set when you're directing, David, is the fact that we know that you're passionate about the work. Mm-hmm. I mean, some people are just, sometimes people are phoning things in or mailing it in or just checking the boxes because that's what, they have to do, or going through the motions. But I knew that when you stepped on the set and we were working together, regardless if we agreed on whatever it was, I knew that you were passionate about it and that you were invested in it and you wanted the best for it, if that makes sense.
Cirroc, it was a gift to me. I had conversations with one particular episodic director, and he says, "David, how can you get up for every show like you do?" And I said, "I don't know how you can't. I mean, you're given this opportunity to to translate a written word and to follow it through and make pictures of it and then present it to people who can then get emotional enjoyment out of it. What a great gift. When I was a kid, you play with army soldiers and you move them all around and you have battles and whatever. When you grow up and you direct, it's the same thing, except now they all have emotions, and that really makes it a much better game. So I always looked at it as a gift, and I'm forever grateful. So thank you for those kind words, Cirroc.
May I ask a question?
Oh yeah,
sure.
I mean, getting up for every episode. Just want to point out, my quick math tells me 62 directed episodes, which is an enormous amount, and hundreds on the producer side. What were you saying, Sue?
I wanted to know, and I apologize if you've been asked this a million times before, but when were you delivered this script? How long did you have to look at it before you actually had to direct the show?
7 days.
7 days?
In episodic television, you have 7 days of prep and either 7 or 8 days to shoot. And sometimes, because episodic television has the vagaries of time, sometimes you don't even get the script on the first day of prep. So sometimes you might only get the script 5 days or even 4 days ahead of time. And even then, you might only get half the script. And then you're going to get colored pages throughout the script where they change stuff continually. So you got to be quick on your toes, and you have to do your homework. But there's not a lot of time to do anything for anybody. Directors, writers, production designers, costume, and the people the crafts had to pull stuff out of science fiction. We had to create everything that didn't exist. Other shows, they can go to Pasadena and shoot in a house. We couldn't do that. We had to build it and design it and all that stuff. So doing a science fiction show is an extraordinary, difficult road to hoe. But you get used to it and you put yourself in that mindset. But 7 days traditionally.
That's astounding. Wow. Well, you knocked it out of the stratosphere with this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to ask a little bit. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, an episodic director comes in and has been given all this stuff, though. You have the script, you have the actors, you go to the casting sessions, but the executive producer makes a decision on the guest cast. So your main input is on the set, but you're given all these wonderful elements and stuff. And I won't say it's easy, but because it's all there, you can really focus on the work. You don't have to worry about all the ancillary stuff. You know that it's all going to be there for your beck and call. And that's a great working, great place to be working in.
Yeah, and my comment was that you must have had an advantage having been on the production side and having relationships with all the the writers, the actor, with everybody. So I would just imagine that you're budgeting episodes, right? And you're making sure the whole the grease is on the wheels so that it keeps moving. So from your perspective, I can imagine that you have such a concept of how much each production day matters, how much work you need to get done, the kind of time that needs to be allotted for this, that, set design, the wardrobe, this, that. You must have had as good as an understanding of all of these functions as anybody there is.
It was a great training ground, and you're absolutely right. It has nothing to do with the creative part of directing, but it has everything to do with the execution of directing. And I can't tell you how many times I would get people from the production staff, the producers, coming down and talking to me and saying, "You've only done 2 pages in the last 6 hours." But I knew where I was. I knew that I was going to pick up the time in the afternoon. I knew better than anybody, and that's not to brag or anything, about where I was and how much time I had to do. So you're exactly right. That experience was invaluable to me. But when you're directing, my producer hat may have been this way, but when I directed, you have to turn it around because you can't let that production experience drive the creative decisions you've made. You have to make. You can only use it to make sure you're budgeting yourself so you don't get killed by the studio or the producing staff, and they get so mad at you that they're going to pull the plug on you. Which I have, as a producer, I've had to do that to directors, where I've had to say you can't shoot anymore. That's a terrible position to be in when you don't get to finish the day's work, or you have to compromise so much. I only had that experience once in my career on my very first episode, and I promised myself I would never put myself in that position again, and I didn't. You have an obligation as a director to deliver creatively within the bounds that you've been given, but to take that to the max. Don't give up.
That's almost exactly what I was going to ask you. Especially as a line producer, where you're really focused on numbers and money and time, did you ever find it every once in a while accidentally to be a hindrance as a director, where you're focused on the creative and you kind of start thinking, no, we can't afford that, or we don't have the time? Did you ever have that, or were you able to keep that balance?
Well, as I said, I only did it on my first episode. That's it. It was called The Mind's Eye. And at the end, there was a stunt where Picard was supposed to kill a Klingon. And it was getting really late, and I was really nervous. My first episode, I didn't want to, risk whatever. And I compromised and had a cheesy end to the episode. And I always regretted it. And it was an incredible learning experience for me, because I said, I'll never make that compromise again. And I never did. So in hindsight, it was good, I guess, that I went through that, because I allowed my production side to influence my delivery of the script as a director.
What an amazing episode, though. That's where Geordi gets kidnapped by Romulan.
No, it was a fun episode. I got to do a lot of crazy stuff with the camera, and LeVar was great in it. We got to take off his visor when he got tortured by the Romulan guys.
Yes.
So
amazing.
Really good one.
Yeah, LeVar has the most beautiful eyes, and he just railed against having to wear that hair clip. It was rich. The design for it came from somebody going to CVS or Rite Aid and bringing in a bunch of women's hair clips into the office for the hairstyle to look at. But he didn't like that thing, and thank goodness eventually he was able to lose it, because an actor, LeVar, it's all in your eyes. And Cirroc, tell me, isn't it in the eyes? Isn't that where the soul of the actor is? Where'd Cirroc go?
Yeah, that's the way.
How would you have liked to have worn a hair thing on your head? That's awful. But we got to take it off.
I didn't even like sitting in the makeup trailer just to get some powder put on. And so I didn't even like that. So yeah, sitting there and having stuff distracting your eyes and your breathing and your movement, that's difficult.
But we were talking earlier. Yeah, we were talking earlier about the eyes, though. Michael's performance in Change of Heart was so extraordinary because his eyes just told it all, and he was able to push through that makeup. Some actors found to be so restricted by the prosthesis makeup. Michael Dorn never had that issue. Boy, he was amazing at being able to just push through it.
Mm.
Yes, and in this episode in particular, I thought he laid a lot of the comedy foundation just with looks that he gave. I mentioned it before, but when he says to Dax, "Did you want to fight over it?" You know,
Cirroc, I was going to say the same thing. That's my favorite line in the episode. His eyes light up.
His eyes light up.
He twinkles because, now we're going to get down to it. I agree. I'm with you 100% there.
Yes, his eyes light up.
Baseball.
What Michael did with that character. Okay, Michael, what he did with that character from the beginning of TNG and how he developed it was just extraordinary. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. And there was also a moment, I don't know about you guys, but there was a shot where Dax is laying and Worf comes over her and he I think it was the bedroom scene, but he's like on top of her. And I don't know, that there was a moment where I thought of Beauty and the Beast, I don't know if you guys
Totally.
Yes, I thought
Did you-
that same exact
did you-
thing.
Because of that
yes.
blanket, that pelt blanket.
Yes. Well, and his hair.
Yeah.
His hair
was- reminded me
and
of
the shot.
Vincent.
Yes.
Because I watched the 80s one and with Ron Perlman, and his hair reminded me of Vincent's hair, and then with that fuzzy blanket. Oh,
Yes.
I-
So you
Sure,
got to think that.
Well, I never thought of Terry Farrell as Beast, though. I just don't get that.
I was going to say, Michael Dorn is not
With
a
that
beast.
luscious hair.
Yeah.
I did want we would be remiss if we didn't point out our 2 non-appearance mentions. We like to point out people that were mentioned but weren't on screen, so they didn't get the credit that they deserved, like on IMDb or anything like that. But they were, of course, mentioned. Did you guys catch the 2?
I know Keiko was one.
Keiko is always one. She's one. And there's another one, speaking of the next generation, that's relevant to TNG.
Majel?
Named his brother too, didn't he?
Yep,
His brother's
Nikolai.
name? Yep, there we go.
Nikolai.
What was that again?
As tough as me.
He
Oh,
Nikolai
Nikolai.
used to
His
take him
adopted brother.
Larzenko.
in the Ural Mountains. They used to go
Oh, yeah.
Great.
camping up there. So this has been a lot of fun. David, thank you so much for joining us and answering all of it. We've got like 1,000 more questions, so we can't wait for you to come back, and we're going to hit you with a bunch more.
Thanks for having me.
And
It's fun.
Goldu Scott, as usual, you've got a UFP shirt on too. That's pretty cool. Very nice.
Nice.
Thanks for joining. Anna Post, thank you so much. We hope to see you again next time. Malissa Longo, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Homer Frizzell, Dr. Sue Gruner, Dr. Marie Segal. Thank you all very much for joining us, for Cirroc, Lofton, and myself, and for the coolest human ever, Mr. Aron Eisenberg. Thank you to David Livingston, and thank you to all of you. We will see you again next time. Until then, always remember the 7th rule.